Well, would you look at that? We are back for another episode of Oh So Curious. I'm Andrew Frankel. We are talking about movies, mostly blonde and other stuff this week. But joining me today, a couple of good guys. We got Rolan Underground and we got Daniyal N. How is it going, my friends? How are you doing?
Doing
Roland, why
well.
don't we start with you? What's going on?
I'm just, I'm doing stuff. You know what I mean? Just hanging out. It's the start of October. I feel refreshed. I feel rejuvenated, if you will. I'm living life. I brought out my fall colors and my fall clothes. I'm ready for Halloween season, and I'm not gonna let this stop me.
Is it starting to feel like fall over there?
It's just a little nippy. I went out last night and I had to
Nippy.
bring a jacket.
Oh gosh, jackets. Yeah, it's still 99 degrees out here, so
I was gonna say, poor West Coast.
yeah.
Daniel, how are
Dan,
you?
I'm good. Yeah, no, I'm just can you guys hear me? I don't know if I was on mute
yeah,
this whole time.
Yeah.
Okay.
you're fine.
All right. 'Cause I know I waved and I was like, did you get okay. No, it's
Can't hear waves.
yeah, it is starting to get a little chilly. It's starting to get a little chilly over here. Like I can even tell like 'cause there's an air conditioner behind the green screen and I had to like turn the temperature up a little bit so it doesn't keep coming on 'cause I'm starting to feel a little too chilly in the room. But yeah, I actually kind of like fall weather, early fall weather, because that to me like all often like hits the sweet spot, like when it's like between 60 and 70 degrees. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm okay with the occasional 75-degree weather day, um,
that's
but it
nice
is,
out
yeah,
here.
at night it starts to get cold. Like it's that kind of time now.
I'm a man who overheats at night, and I like it when I can just open a window and freeze in the night. That's a really nice feeling. I like that. Anyway, yeah, fall, which means fall movies, which means Halloween movies, which means all kinds of stuff. Have you heard of the thing I'm the most excited about in terms of movie news this week? Is the Community movie?
Yeah, I
Oh,
saw that.
I'm
Are you
so
guys
hyped.
were you guys fans of the show?
Oh my gosh, I love the show. Honestly, I thought it was so good, and they've been talking about this movie for years.
Yeah, it was a kind of one of the first like inside joke memes from a show.
Yeah, it was. I don't even remember what season, but there was like a show that Abed liked, and Jeff was like, "It's never gonna last. It's going to get canceled."
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, it's gonna be 6 seasons in a movie," and they did seasons. They knew what they were doing.
Exactly. Oh
And
yeah, no, they plan everything. So that's a Dan Harmon,
yeah, I love that guy.
trademark. He's always planning things and dropping little hints, and that show has such an interesting story just in terms of being just a new kind of idea,
Hmm.
lasting 3 seasons, and Dan Harmon getting fired from his own show for the fourth, the studio ruining it for season 4,
Gas leak
only to
year.
admit their failure to bring him back, then cancel the show, and then it gets picked up by Yahoo
Yeah,
for the 6th season. And I mean, against all odds, against fights on between him and like Chevy Chase, be interesting to see if he comes back. But yeah, I know, maybe a cameo,
yeah.
but it would. Against all odds, they're actually pulling it off, and maybe it's just because we're kind of in a reboot season, or decade.
Yeah.
But hopefully, they play into that, and the whole premise of the show was let's make a mini movie every week and do a genre parody. So to do a movie, I just imagine it's going to be super self-aware, and I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what direction they take it in.
Do you have any
I've never been a
prediction?
fan of the franchise, but to,
No?
to your point very quickly, and I don't want to take away from the movie itself, but I think what you pointed out there was studios nowadays are hungry for well-known IP that's got some kind of pre-existing fan base, and
Yeah.
whatever they can get their hands on, whether it's a show like Community or like something like Lord of the Rings, they're just everybody's hungry for that. So I think that's maybe where the desire comes from. Is this what streaming services is going to be on?
Peacock.
Okay, that makes sense because this is like totally down their
which
alley
is
of like,
well, it's
yeah.
it's what's funny about it is that like it's weird that NBC would be the ones bringing it back. You
Yeah.
know, you'd think that
Well,
maybe
what did it air on?
it aired on NBC, but then
Oh,
they canceled the show, and then Yahoo picked it up, and now it's been on Netflix for who knows how long.
And
But
Hulu.
and Hulu. So I guess, those aren't the NBC affiliates. So for
well,
NBC's Peacock to take this back is shocking.
it's
Yeah.
probably because they own the rights to it. Like I think it's probably was produced by like NBC, was it
I don't know.
Universal
I don't
Cable
know the particulars of it
Productions?
because it
Yeah.
moved around.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, so the way shows tend to work is like the production company maybe like, so a lot of networks develop shows in-house. They have their own production arms. So
Mhm.
this might have been a Universal Cable production thing, which is the NBC Universal's television production studio. They, even if the original network cancels it and it was like originally like made by that network's in-house studio, the show can still be shopped around with other people. And in fact, like for example, Hulu, I think Comcast, which is the parent company of NBC Universal, still owns like a 33% stake in Hulu, um, which they're thinking about selling, or there was something in the news about that recently, or I think they're eventually gonna sell to Disney because Disney owns like the rest of it now. But but yeah, I think that's probably explains why it's going back to Peacock because it just makes simply like they don't have to license it. They already
I
own
don't
the
know.
property. So
But in any case, like it's funny that now NBC has to eat their words twice or eating crow twice, because first they fired Dan Harmon, brought him back because they couldn't handle it, and now they are saying, yeah, that was a pretty successful show. Fans actually want this to happen. The last time fans wanted something to come back this badly, I think, was Arrested Development, which Netflix took advantage of, and that was a great move for them, even though they also ruined the show. But it's, it's,
Oh,
it's, it's good news, and even with Dan Harmon, I don't think it's going to be a sellout kind of movie. I think he'll actually respect his fans and give them something that's consistent with everything they loved about the show and improves on it or comments on, you know, the nature of reboots right now, because as I was saying last week, we watched that show Reboot, and it's just not, they're not even commenting on reboots, and they should. Anyway, excited about that. Is there anything else coming out that you guys are excited for?
uh
Dean.
well, okay, so I think I'm did I even mention no? I don't think I've mentioned on the show, but I started watching Reacher on I'm really behind, on everybody I'm pretty sure who has wanted to watch it has already seen it because the show came out of the summer, or early summer, and I just started watching Reacher on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
It's based on the Jack Reacher, the Lee Child Jack Reacher books, and
yeah.
I have always been a fan of like the two Tom Cruise movies. I know that a lot of people kind of knock on those movies because they're like Reacher in the books is like this big hulking dude, and Tom Cruise is not that. But
Yeah.
I always liked the verisimilitude, maybe is the word to use, where Tom Cruise just was this unassuming, not physically imposing person who in the movie they played it off so well where he just, people pick a fight with him and he just beats up like seven guys. And you're like, oh, okay. I mean, we know it's Tom Cruise, but in the context of the story, like, it's like, oh, like, no, you don't see that coming. So I like that approach to it, and I think they played it off well. Paramount Pictures made the movies, but now on Prime Video they have the series, which is based on the books, and I forget which book specifically the first season is based on, but they cast Alan Ritchson, who I think was in
Yeah.
Titans, and he's also now going to be in the Fast X, the next Fast and Furious movie, and he's the farthest thing from a Tom Cruise in terms of stature that you can think of, and he's probably as close to the what the book version of the character was. And it's not that it's is the big selling point. I think what really sold me on the show is just like the two main supporting characters that they have, like the two detectives, or like the one police officer, the detective that he works with in this town, and just the back and forth relationship, and then like I think her name is what, Roscoe, I think is the name of her character. It's played by Villa Fitzgerald, who's like the female, like she's like the female cop who's at this in this town, and it's like she has this like really like will they won't they thing going on with Reacher the whole time. And it's like love that whole like dynamic throughout the whole show. And then the show is great on action. It's, you know, like Alan Richardson, he's got this thing like every time he tries to he gets into a fight with somebody, you know, this guy's huge. He's got like his elbows are like the size of my head. So like he just like grabs you with one hand, and then he just like MMA style just like elbows you like two times. The guy's dead, moves on. I'm just like, the action in that show is like Bourne, like watching Bourne, except like not watching it with shaky footage and the turn of green in the image. And the show doesn't take itself super seriously outside of very few moments. So it's been really fun to watch.
Can I just ask, does really good action make you like a movie?
It can help. I mean, I don't think action, when it's just for the sake of action, is good. Like, I always use the example of if you watch like some of the Transformers movies, especially like Transformers Age of Extinction, by the time in the last 20 minutes of the movie, you like the last 30 minutes is like one big action sequence, and 10-15 minutes into it, you're just like, I'm just ready for this to be done, because at this point it's all visual noise. So you get bombarded with it. But when it's done to advance the story, because a good action scene is the same as a good scene with dialogue. It's meant to advance the plot and develop character.
There was one time I made exception to that, and that was when I saw Mad Max Fury Road. I was just like, yeah, that's cool. That was the one time I was like, okay, yeah, I don't have to think too much about this. This is just like, that was it was fun to watch. That was cool. But other than that, I'm just like, I would almost always rather just fast forward through fight scenes. I just don't care.
Well, but that's the thing about, so with Reacher, like for example, Reacher, I like the show so much. And by the way, so I think there's 8 episodes in this first season. There are 8 episodes. I started watching it. It was pretty late in the night, and I was like, I'll go watch one episode, maybe 2. 5.5 hours later, I've gone through, I want to say 6.5 episodes, so I'm only like 1.5 episodes away from the end of the season. And it was like, oh, time to go to work. Like, it was a weekday night, so I just binged through like most of that season, and it was that interesting to just kind of sit through. And the biggest thing about the fight sequences that I like about it is none of the fight sequences last very long. It's very quick, very concise. It's not like John Wick where you're having like gun fu fights for like 5-10 minutes at a time. It's quick and dirty. Like, and here's the thing: most people that Jack Reacher comes across in the show don't stand a chance against him physically. Like, he just it takes like
also,
3 moves, the guy's got done. So
I feel like real fights in real life, it's like a couple punches and a guy goes down. It doesn't last a fraction of what these things are.
And so what's exciting to me about this show in particular is, unlike a lot of I watch a lot of these kind of shows, but the thing is, these kind of shows, unless they get a huge audience, they tend to get canceled pretty quickly. But like this show is gonna be going on, it seems like, at least for a while, because they have a lot of material to pull from. And then I know this show just got renewed for a 2nd season, so I know that, you know, watching this, I'm gonna have something to come back to. I don't have to like just give up on the show. I'm like, oh, it was a nice 8 episodes. I wish they did more. I recommend it. Check it out, because it's honestly, I did not think I was gonna like it, because I was like, I don't know if I can buy this guy, like this huge. But they really lean into the whole like he's a hulking giant aspect of the show, which is fantastic.
Well, speaking of that, we should probably talk about what everybody wants to hear about, and that's She-Hulk.
Another bulking creature, yes.
Speaking of Hulks, let's talk about She-Hulk. Episode 7, or as I like to call it, we ask again, where is Daredevil? Because that is very much a question that needs to be addressed. Before I give any of my opinions, I mean, I just want to ask you guys, A, have you kept up with the show, like Roland and Andrew both? And then, no. And B, what have you been hearing about the show?
Every week I hear you complain about it more and more, and you You just started with such optimism for this thing, and I said, from day one, I was like, this is not going to be good. About 2 minutes into the first episode, I go, there's just no way I'm watching every episode of this. It was hard for me to get through the first. I've heard nothing but horrible things about it from every commenter, except for some reason, Rotten Tomatoes says it's certified fresh, and we got one weirdo on our Instagram being like, I like the show. Like, you're in the minority, but I guess the show is for you, but you're a weirdo. Roland?
I have not kept up with it either. I think I'm waiting until the last episode drops where I'll try to catch up with everything and have my opinion then. But I haven't been hearing
I'll do that, but I'll have a huge dose of ketamine first.
Yeah.
I mean, I was surprised that it was given a certified fresh rating, particularly considering I think they mentioned that it's off several hundred reviews, which I was like, okay. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay. So season 1 specifically, I guess, no, don't want ads. Season 1 is got 518 critics reviews and is sitting at an 87%. The user ratings 13,000.
We gotta stop listening to critics.
Look, I'll be honest, I don't think this show is deserving of a 36% score. I think that's too low. But I also don't think it's deserving of a 87. I'm thinking this is more somewhere in the 50 to 60 range. So I was surprised to hear that many critics, gave it it's such a high score that it's now certified fresh. It's the Rotten Tomatoes requirements for a TV show to be certified fresh are pretty stringent. Like, you need to have most shows don't even cross the threshold of like the number of reviews you need to even be considered for that rating. So the fact that show is now certified fresh, on top of the fact that I think the audience reaction is mixed, to say the least. It is surprising, but talking about this,
if I ate meat like this that was certified fresh, I would sue the meatpacking industry. This is not fresh at all. This is a bad show. It's irresponsible for them to say this.
Well, sorry, go ahead, Roland.
I was just saying, dang.
Dang,
okay.
Indeed.
Yeah, fair. That's a fair reation. Episode 7 in particular, though. Let's just quickly kind of talk about what goes down here, and then we'll, I guess I'll pass my judgment on it, if you will.
Sure.
I put in the graphic here, where have all the good men gone? And to me, that while obviously the show is focused on Jen Walters, I do think there is this thing in the show where every male, and we've talked about this before, but every male character is almost caricaturized, where you're not seeing any kind of meaningful depth in a lot of these characters, or even like a character that you initially think, oh, they're gonna develop this into somebody who's a relatable person, like somebody who feels like you can walk up to and have a conversation with, without like making it seem like they're this one-dimensional person written for the screen. Even that person then turns out to be, I'll put up a quick spoiler warning. So Josh, the person who Jen meets at the wedding in the last episode, ends up being somebody who's sort of just on the ruse of trying to steal her She-Hulk blood, essentially, and that's like the big twist ending of this episode, which I almost sort of saw that coming in the last episode. I'm like,
because all men are just desperate to take power away from strong women.
I mean, this show's track record with like male characters was like, I'm like, all right, I'm not buying it, Josh. Like, this is an act. Anyway, so the episode kicks off with you see them, they're like, they had a night together. We later find out that they slept together and all that stuff, and then he doesn't call her back. While she's anxiously waiting to get that call back, she heads out to this retreat where Blonsky's thing that keeps him from turning into a Hulk is malfunctioning. She gets stuck there because a man bull apparently smashes her car, and while she's there, there's a little bit of character development work happening. She comes to more of an acceptance of, hey, maybe Josh wasn't the right person for her. I mean, look, from a character development standpoint, I think the last episode and this episode have been good in giving us a reason to care for this person, like really fleshing out the character of Jen Walters, because not only was the story and like the political messaging of the show bothering me from the beginning, it's the lack of a narrative thrust the biggest thing that was bothering me is I just couldn't get myself to like buy like into the idea of like I need to care for Jen Walters. Like, what is her problem? She's working for one of the biggest law firms in LA. She's probably getting paid very well to do it. Now she has superpowers where like if you could turn into a Hulk, she can't even get drunk, so she can just drink herself like all night long and no problems. And her biggest problem is I don't want to be a Hulk. I just want to be a normal person. It's sort of like,
Yeah.
it's not even like first world problems. Those are like first world MCU superhero problems. So it was hard to relate to her
It's
in like a
unrealistic
realistic manner.
feminist critique problems.
Right, but then like in the last couple of episodes, you start to see like they're really honing in on this idea of this person, this woman in her 30s is trying to date, and it's very hard to find someone, who's right for her, who's like likes her for who she is and not for her for being a Hulk. And so I mean, so far she hasn't found anybody, but just
Shocking.
that desire and the struggle, and then the show's writers being able to kind of show that internal struggle on screen a little bit more. I think that to me has been the highlight of the last couple of episodes. But yeah, I do think we could probably use a couple of more guys in the show who are a little more than just a caricature of what like a bad date looks like.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I don't see any signs of it improving, but you can keep hoping. And if you are another weirdo who likes the show, why don't you comment wherever? We're on Instagram and YouTube and Twitter and Twitch and all the places. So, comment and engage because you could be the next comment of the week. Speaking of which, this week's comment of the week comes to us from, well, let's take a look. Who's it from? Who do we got here? Angela Carlton. She commented on our tribute to Betty White. I sure do miss Betty White, and probably giving God funny remarks as Rose with her long, silly story about Saint Ola. LOL. Yeah, I think everybody misses Betty White. I think people were bummed out when she didn't make it to her 100th birthday, even though they printed that 100 Years of Betty White magazine cover.
Yeah.
She was really one of a kind, and there will always be people who try to be the next Betty White, and for good reason, because we need more of those earnest but also like straight shooting, sarcastic old women who can sort of cut through the bullshit of the world. She was wonderful, and yeah, and we all miss her. So there's that. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for being part of the movie fan community. And, stay curious. In the meantime, we got some other stuff going on. What are we talking about next? Blonde? Is it
Actually,
Blonde? What?
what we didn't do, we might as well I don't think it's too late to do this. Let's do it right now. I wanted to go through the rundown, which we already did one of the things on the rundown. We sort of just skipped over it. But if you guys are tuning in just now, here's a rundown for what the show is going to look like. Now, we already talked about She-Hulk episode 7. We reviewed it, so you can kind of go back a little bit and check that out if you're interested. But we will be talking about next Bollywood Virgins Watch. We watched Kal Ho Na Ho, a 2003 movie, pretty old, but a classic. Rings of Power episode 6, we will be reviewing that as well. And then we'll have a debate on the new movie Blonde, the NC-17 film on Netflix. And we will finish things up talking about Andor episode 4, the new Star Wars show on Disney Plus, which actually is looking like a pretty good show. I mean, I think it's better than most of the Star Wars shows we have seen recently, and Mags had some really good things to say about it. So we'll take a look at that too. That's the rundown. So as you saw there, I think the next thing on the docket is Bollywood Virgins Watch, and we watched Kal Ho Na Ho this week. So,
well, let's talk about it. I'm a virgin. Okay, so Kal Ho Na Ho is a 20-year-old movie, Bollywood. It's a romantic comedy. It's a love triangle. It's about, Indians living in America, but we have sort of a religious divergence, a sort of a cultural divergence between generations. This is another one that I watched with no subtitles. Here and there I did, but I knew what was going on just based on all of the action, because as I've just continued to see, the action and the acting in Bollywood movies is so demonstrative and so clear. You really don't need to understand the exact words they're saying because the intention is all there. So you can test me on it. Maybe I got some things wrong, but I find subtitles incredibly distracting, and I can't watch a movie with them because I just end up reading the titles. Maybe you're
Wait,
like that.
seriously?
Yeah, it's just like I just can't do it. It
I
totally
mean,
I didn't know
distracts
that.
me.
if you can't understand, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I would still maybe because you might end up missing the nuances of a scene if you can't understand exactly what they're saying. Because
You'd be amazed how quickly you tune in to just like the rhythm and the reactions and you know, I don't know. What do you think I could have missed?
I mean, I'm just saying, like, I even like with the English movies, I just have the subtitles on.
I
Uh,
feel like people fall into one camp or the other.
yeah,
Yeah, it literally like it's like the picture stops existing for me, and
really.
I just end up reading, and it's such an unpleasant
Hmm.
thing for me. It's totally takes me out of a movie, just turns it
Dang.
into homework. Don't like it. Don't like it
I,
at all.
I think for me is like I guess I'm used to like multitasking. So I'm like I'm going like I'm looking at the reaction. I'm looking at like kind of like in the words, just kind of like maybe as like reassurance or something like that, because there's a big problem like with like audio design where things get like very mashed together. I've noticed, but
Hmm.
it honestly I do this all the time, so it almost feels like I have like one eye on the faces and one eye is like on the lower third, their lines,
Yeah.
subtitles.
Maybe this is too much information for you, but I have always had have had like reading takes a real serious amount of effort for me.
Spoilers,
Um,
by the way.
yeah, spoiler, we're getting a real inside look into that. Like it's an all-encompassing effort for me. I have to stop doing everything, and so when I end up reading subtitles for something, I'm suddenly not watching a movie anymore, and I'm like
Hmm.
following along and just trying to get everything. Much easier to just watch a movie for me.
I think it's very impressive that you watch this movie of a language. I'm guessing that they're not speaking English in this.
Every once in a while they do. That's a
yeah.
nice other
Really?
thing about, yeah, every once in a while they slip in some English. I don't know why they do that. Dan?
Well, I think it's like a cultural thing. It's all it's part of the vernacular almost. Because,
Yeah.
well, so if you have like if English is your first language, you always just kind of grew up, speaking English all the time. It's a little different. Like I think but so you just naturally comes to you, and you're not like inclined to like all of a sudden weave Spanish into your conversation or anything. I mean,
Yeah.
we have Spanish words maybe we'll use every once in a while, but we're not like phrases and stuff.
Taco.
Right. Yeah, but if you're living in most other parts of the world, there's a lot of it's not even just in like in this case I think the movie is in Hindi, so that from obviously a Bollywood movie from India, but even in other parts of the world, like if you're in Germany or something like, or if you're in Italy, like English is basically the language of trade and commerce, and much like what it has been for many years now. So a lot of people whose native language is not English, it's just by virtue of there's some part of their life they need to use English, whether it's written, spoken, or any other, some other form. It just kind of becomes weaved into your vernacular, maybe, and there are certain
Yeah.
words actually where in
But
some
at the same
languages, certain
time,
words in English, there's just no equivalent of, so people just find it easier to
yeah.
use in English.
But
Well,
they do it at these key moments where it's like, okay, I could tell he's sick, but they go heart attack. I go, yeah, okay, that's that. Okay, great.
it's
Now I
also
know.
part of that is also because the so that's like the Hindi equivalent of a heart attack. I can't even think of what that would be in the moment now, but it's just the general vernacular of how you talk about a heart attack, even if you're talking in Hindi in like in India, for example. Most of the time people just call it a heart attack because you go to a hospital, the sign probably says heart attack. You're like, feel, like it's all, so it's
Yeah.
really woven into the culture. So yeah, and a lot of
Wow.
people like
I
some of
mean,
the
okay,
wording, it would be
there's
like
stuff
old
like
Hindi.
that.
So
There's stuff like that, but like they did a cover of Pretty Woman, in this, which I I'm always amazed at how much I enjoy the musical numbers in these. I'm just like, man, this is just like these are good songs. They're interesting beats. The instrumentation is different. It's I recommend watching these Bollywood movies just because it's such a departure from everything. They're charming. This wasn't my favorite one that we've watched. I felt like it rambled a little bit.
Well,
It was 3 hours long, but
yeah.
it was
Tell
it
me about
was
the story. Like, what did you think about, like, because it is a love triangle, but it's also sort of like one person is dying. Like Aman, the
yeah.
character of Aman, played by Shah Rukh Khan, he's essentially dying, as we find out throughout the movie. Spoiler alert, we already put that up. And so as a result of that, he can't really. He's like, I'd rather not like start a relationship with this woman so that then I
Okay,
pass
so
away, she has
so
to grieve over me.
that's the issue. So you don't find out that he's sick until like hour two. Um, and yet he comes on very strong. He does the whole musical number, Pretty Woman, and he's
Yeah.
like hitting on this girl and he's really into her. And he's always flirting with her. He flirts with everybody, and he's a wonderful character. Like he helps everybody as best he can. He really is trying to make an impact on everybody's life as best he can. You just think, wow, he's just a great guy. We don't realize that maybe he knows he has a heart condition and he doesn't have long to live. And as much as he really loves this girl and he really has an affinity for his new friendship. He actually, it's not a typical love triangle because it's not I love you and we're fighting. It's I love both of you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be around, so I'm going to set the two of you up. And for a while, I couldn't figure out why she was suddenly attracted to what was his name?
Uh, Forgot the character name, but I know the actor is Saif Ali Khan.
Rohit?
Rohit. Yeah. So I was like, they've just been friends this whole time, and suddenly they spend one night at a bar, and they're telling each other, "You're cute, and it's like, wait, there's no love here really, and she's falling in love with Aman the whole time. And so I was, there was some tiresome, machinations. I was just like, okay,
So I will say this to that end, some of the machinations of like the way the story plays out in this movie, you would have to kind of get the cultural context of like how Bollywood movies used to work in that time, like in terms of like this was like a normal, like you normally kind of like suspend your disbelief and it's sort of part and parcel of what a Bollywood movie experience would be.
yeah,
It's also, I think, even by today's Bollywood standard, this feels a little dated because today's standards, like social standards in India, have like evolved and changed and kind of like
really,
become more in line with what you would expect living in the US even. And this movie, like we talked about
that's too
earlier,
bad.
it was majority shot in the US, I think for the most part in New York City and Brooklyn. So
That was
it
also
was,
neat.
yeah. But yeah, some of that whole thing of I'm dying, so I'm gonna try to, because the characters of Rohit and Nana, like the girl, like they're both like the best of friends. So it's sort of like then it becomes a matter of I gotta turn this friendship, this platonic thing into a romantic relationship. And
Yeah, and that's not exactly clear from the beginning because what they do make clear is he has feelings for Nena.
right. Like he's sort of like liked her for a while, but he's like always he's hesitant to act on those feelings, or he doesn't know if she feels the same way. Whereas
Yeah,
she, I think, starts out as somebody who just like she doesn't think the same way about him, but then Aman doesn't come into the story until a little bit of the movie has already passed, and then she falls in love with Aman, so she's in love with Aman. Rohit is in love with Nana, and then Nana is in. Sorry, I guess Aman is technically in love with Nana, but he can't really. He's like, I'm dying, so I'm gonna set you up with. Yeah, it is like you said.
it,
There's no. It's not a. You can't really close the triangle. It's not
yeah.
that kind
Well,
of a
that's the
distinct
thing.
story.
It's a really interesting take on a triangle because it really is. It is a love triangle, but they're not competing. I think the most interesting and compelling part of this is he's such good friends with the other guy, and he's like
There's some
trying
really
to
compelling
make
like
it happen.
emotional sequences.
Really, really
Like the one
are.
where he's rushed, like he's got a heart condition, right? Like that's like
Hmm.
so he didn't tell you specifically why he's dying, other than the fact that he's got some sort of a heart condition that's gonna eventually kill him. And
Yeah,
then he at one point he's rushing down the streets of New York City to try to get to Rohit so he doesn't like completely walk out on Nana. And it's, yeah, no, there's some. I think the acting
Yeah,
was pretty good for the most
the
part.
acting's great. The acting's great. The movie is entertaining. There's some good comedy throughout the whole thing. You really feel for a lot of the characters in their different moments. Um, and then like when he does run after them out of the hospital, the doctor does say you're gonna have one more episode and that's it, and it's just sort of a ticking time bomb after that, and so he just says screw it, and he tries to make it happen for them.
Now, to kind of follow up a little bit, so the surface of the story here is obviously the love triangle, and then, like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of this idea of there's this 2 or 3 generations of people at least 2 generations of people shown here, and the older generation trying to like doing their absolute best to preserve their Indian values while they're living in the U.S., and then the younger generation trying to like contemplate. I think that you could say there's 3 generations. So the generation
Yeah.
in the middle trying to find the balance, and the younger generation obviously like growing up in the U.S., they're less inclined to kind of take up those Indian values because that's not the world they live in. And there's that clash, and then there's the whole love story, the love triangle thing. But thematically, like the graphic that I made for this segment was acceptance of life's fragility. I think having seen this movie so many times, like this movie came out in 2003 and I was around 80 years old at the time.
Yeah,
And so I was young enough that at the end of the movie, I was asking like, so because Shah Rukh Khan is like one of my favorite actors. I grew up watching all of his movies. He's like
he's
today
fantastic.
one of
He's
the biggest
really like
actors of
you
all
told me
time.
that before
Yeah.
and I didn't know which face I was looking for, and I was like, oh, that guy's a star. He was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, and to that end, I mean, so when I was 80 years old, I watched this movie. I remember to this day, like asking my mom or one of my parents, like, so is he dead? Like, is he gonna be alive? Because you're 8 years old, you're sort of like
Yeah,
buy into the narrative, the story, because it is like the whole last sequence when he's on the hospital bed. Like, it's if you're suspended your disbelief and you're fully immersed in the story, it is very like it's an emotional like scene,
it
and
was. It
they're just kind
was.
of like saying their goodbyes, and then you see the scene afterward. But really what drove it home for me is like the sequence after he passes away, and then kind of like skip forward in time,
Yeah,
and this idea of, I think, and then the main title song of this movie, Kaloho Naho, the title of the movie, Kaloho Naho, like the lyrics are, I think it's basically the main lyrics of that song kind of translate to saying enjoy the moment in the here and the now as much as you can, because tomorrow it may not come, or this may not be here for you tomorrow. So that's kind of like the thematic message of the
it
movie. And then
comes
obviously if
across.
you look at it from a bird's eye view of like he sort of accepts his fate, and then his journey throughout the movie in a lot of ways is to have everybody around him, including his own mother, accept the fate, like her son is dying and he's dying, and
Yeah,
everybody around him who cares for him has to kind of learn to live with that, and then to move on, and then celebrate his memory rather than like hold on to his him even though he's gone. Like I think that's, and I grew to appreciate that part of the movie, and it's not something that you get maybe on the first viewing the true appreciation for. You have to kind of watch it a few times to really understand that, because it's not, that part of the story is not like shoved in your face. That's like more of the subtle thematic message of the movie more than anything. But I
mm.
mean, did you get any sense of any of that, or were you just more thinking about like the love story part of it and the cultural identity stuff that was throughout the film?
I got a lot. I got a lot out of it. I mean, the thematic stuff, as in addition to the action, it all comes across. This is one of those. An exercise in watching this stuff without subtitles and stuff is like you see how the languages of musical composition and scoring and acting and sound design, how all of these things come together to provoke certain thoughts and emotions and feelings without dialogue. Dialogue is really icing on the cake. And looking at this as a voice actor also, like I read scripts every day, and you know it's words really need to convey essential information, but so much else of the storytelling is in action or in fixating on one detail or emphasizing something with music or with sound design, or playing things off. So this movie, yeah, you get the relationships, you see the love triangle, you see the rejection of the adopted daughter by the grandmother, and you see these people live and grow through changing times. And I don't know, the relationships are all very real. It wasn't like your typical Hollywood romantic comedy, which I also really appreciated. But at the same time, it had a lot of fun with itself. It was just like, this is. It was touching, and that's what I've come to expect from Bollywood movies. Is they will take you from laughing to crying to like watching a song and people dancing, being like, "Wow." The club scene was absurd.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's probably the one part of the movie that's aged the worst out of anything. Even when it came out first, I was like, okay, but
yeah.
like, yeah, I agree. I think that's the one part of the movie that's really not aged very well.
What happens in the club?
It's just like the costume designs and the dancing and like the
Yeah.
drinks, and it's just like it was just so weird.
Yeah,
It's weird.
it was out of touch, I think, even when it came out somewhat, but like today I think it's like way, and I'm not saying like any like, like um it's like I think it was like the costume design were very bold and racy, and like there's a lot of just people showing skin for the sake of showing skin. It just meant to
Yeah.
look like forward thinking.
Yeah.
Oh, I think the message was like, these are the people like living like the life today. This is what but it's like the reason why it always stuck out to me was like the rest of the movie, they're not like dressing that way. They're not doing anything like that. That was like the one instance where you see them in that environment. So it felt off for the characters too. Um, but I mean, the one thing I was gonna very quickly mention is like, as I mentioned, I grew up watching this movie many times over the years. So
Yeah.
the very first time I said like, hey, is this guy actually alive? Like, is he actually like, And then this movie won awards. They had all kinds of like stuff that the press tour and everything. So then like like in 2014, my grandmother passed away. Like that was the first person, and to this day, like the closest person to me that has ever passed away. And it's like now I watch this movie with a different perspective, because you really
Yeah.
get this, like, this movie, I think, kind of provides an outlet for people to like kind of see like what it means to, because my grandmother, like, we knew she was probably going to pass away for a while, because she had
Yeah.
been like deathly sick and in hospital. She was on a ventilator for a while. She came out of that, and then they just said we can't really do too much, because they found that she had, I think, like blood cancer, but I think there's a different word for that. But so they were like, she's too old, we can't really try to do much for her. She was like 90 years old. So they
Yeah.
put her in a hospice, and then she, eventually passed. And then morbidly ironically enough, like, I had not seen her the entire time she was in the hospital. Like, I last talked to her when she was at home. And then when I went to see her, she was in the hospice, and literally, well, she wasn't even conscious at the time, but I was like, like, go say what you gotta say, because she may not be around for much longer. And I was the person who was sitting next to her when she passed. So it's like,
Wow.
to me, there's like always a regret, or I never spoke to her like for the last maybe few weeks that she was around, because I was like with work, school, and I was like, I'll talk to her, I'll visit her. And then, the last conscious conversation that I had with her was well before she got admitted to the hospital, and then she passes away. When I go see her, she's not even like conscious at the time. And so it just, that's a regret, but then kind of dealing with that kind of loss, and then kind of like, that this movie to me then just has a different kind of connection to it now than before.
I
But
I I, I
yeah,
imagine so. And
yeah,
I think another thing about it is that by making it a young man, it does impart that wisdom of, you know, everybody's got their time, and I think it's an important thing to consider as a young person, because you do reach a point where you become responsible for taking care of yourself, eating well, and like just living, and you don't know when your time is coming, and so you really do have to, like, as cliche as it is, and as many times as you hear it a day, a lot of people don't, but you really do have to live in the moment, and take advantage of the time that you have, because you don't know how much you have.
yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Um,
So
Absolutely. I will
I mean,
just to kind of
fair.
end on a
Yeah.
brighter note because I know I probably
sure.
like brought the mood down a little bit, but this movie, every time I watch it nowadays, it's always I forget just how funny it is. It's not, it's like because I remember it for obviously like the emotionally heavy moments and everything, and like the love story and like all of that stuff that happens, like in the cultural clashes that happen, and that causes a lot of drama. But this movie just practically becomes like a comedy for a while, and to me like that was something that I always forget about it, and I just think watching it, those moments, I think that's what you mean by I'm like these watching Bollywood movies is such a well-rounded experience. You're not They may like tend to lean in a genre, one particular genre, but they
Yeah.
never sort of live in one genre. This is an
No,
you
the
get a
same could
full
be said
meal.
for
Yeah,
what did we watch? Koi Mil Gya,
yeah.
and is also the Forrest Gump one that I just saw. Uh,
Lal Singh Chadda.
Lao
Yeah.
Sing Chada. So all of these, they, yeah, I guess it's not fair because Lao Sing Chada was remake, but they do take you through all these different experiences, and maybe that's a problem with, you know, like MCU movies try to be action, action, comedy, comedy, action, action, comedy, comedy, and maybe every once in a while love interest, but it feels very one note. Even listening to the music, like you listen to their music, you listen to our music. There's rich instrumentation and interesting beats, and like we just sort of have.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I think the music is the big. I mean, I love Bollywood music. I've always have because the diversity of, and I think a lot of it comes from, if you live in India, if you live in the greater subcontinent in general, like all of those countries, there's so many different languages and subcultures that sort of meld together, and all of those are represented in some way or another in like Bollywood movies. Where in the U.S., I think like whatever's mainstream at the time, you see a lot of, but you don't see a lot of like the other, because not everybody listens to that kind of same kind of music. Like if not
no.
everybody listens to The Weeknd, for example, or the next Taylor Swift album. It's people listen to different kinds of music, but a lot of the big mainstream stuff doesn't quite account for those things. I think again we keep going back to this, but just to kind of wrap the conversation, I just wanted to the comparison I think I would make is like the closest thing today that kind of feels like what a Bollywood movie would do is like a Top Gun Maverick, because you got a little bit of everything in there. You got the character
Yeah.
relationships, you got the familial themes of, Rooster and Maverick trying to connect as like
Honestly,
a pseudo father son kind of, and then you got the action, and there was some comedy, there was drama, some
you
like
you you say
ice
you say
hangman,
Top
Iceman
Gun.
dies.
I actually think the most reminiscent uh, director or like movies that I even get the same kind of flavor from are Woody Allen movies. I he takes you through all these different uh, emotions, and I know Roland, you're not a fan, but I I just I that's the closest I can say is like there's sort of this you know not being from Hollywood, uh, that outsider appreciation and celebration of everything a film can be, and doing all of the things that you can with that. I think Bollywood and Woody Allen both do a really good job of.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me like one example, I mean, and this is something you probably don't agree with, would be like Steven Spielberg. I think not everything that he's
No,
worked
the
on.
thing, actually, you know what? Steven Spielberg, he knows what he's doing. I just find him cloying. So,
Yeah,
but
but the
he's
point
good.
I think that what I mean by that and is you get like a lot of Spielberg movies are like these full meals. You're not
Totally.
getting, I mean, there's examples where you're getting like something that firmly lives in the genre that it lives in, but in a lot of ways, the Spielberg movies, like you get the awe, the wonder, you get the characters who are sort of having real world relatable problems, but then you also get like the larger than life storytelling, and not that you get songs or anything, but unless you watch West Side Story, that's a musical, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah,
Meh.
well, we're gonna be doing more of these Bollywood Virgins Watch because I feel it's a good way of exploring a totally different kind of filmmaking approach than what we see in Hollywood even today. And a lot of these movies that we're watching right now, I mean, they're what would be considered Bollywood classics. So 2003, that's like 2 decades ago. I think the next one we're gonna do is also roughly from the same time. Munna Bhai M.B.B.S, which is, if you are a fan of Bollywood movies, you probably know what that is. Yeah, I mean, hopefully you guys had a good time with the film. I don't mean for these to become a chore, but I do think they're like fascinating studies.
They're not a
if not
chore.
anything
They are a
else.
time commitment, though.
That's yes. They are like long. They're like 3 hours. I think the songs like add up, right? Like there's like 5 songs. Each of them is like 4
And
or
they're
5
long
minutes.
songs.
That alone
I
is
mean,
like
I
an
was
hour.
like, I was into the Pretty Woman thing for the first minute, and I was like, it's been 5 minutes. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Songs nowadays are shorter too in Bollywood movies, but back
That's
then, yeah,
probably a
5,
good
6
move.
minutes was like normal. So
Yeah, well, you know what? I recommend it. It's on Netflix. You should go watch it with or without subtitles, your choice. And in the meantime, let us know what you think. We're all over the place. So comment, like, subscribe, share, do all the things that we need you to do. Help us grow and tell us what you think and be part of the conversation, because we're just people watching movies at the end of the day, and so are you. So thank you for watching, and now shall we continue to see what's going on with The Rings of Power on Amazon Prime. I'm not watching it, but people on our team are.
Okay, so finally, it took 6 episodes, but finally, Arendir, Theo, and Browen, or whatever her name is, like, finally something interesting happens with them where I can pay attention, because I have to, because it's the entire episode. So there's a battle, and the orcs show up to the village, and it was like, there was a couple of sequences that were like Home Alone style traps. They just, Browen like chopped a rope that was connected to a wagon she set on fire, and it shoots down at the orcs. They jump out of the way and they go, they missed us. And then out of nowhere, a second wagon with fire hits him. And that was the extent of their planning for the orc attack.
Wow. I don't know where to start. I think it's fair to say that Westlands is no more. It's Mordor time. It's Mordor time, baby. Like, turn down for what? See, okay. The first half, I mean, full spoilers alert. Let's start with that. First half of the episode, meh, whatever. Couldn't care less. It was just kind of like, yeah, let's get over with it. The second half was, yeah, it was just much better. Like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It was just much better. I enjoyed it a lot more. And that finale, when we see the whole Mount Doom turning into its glory and beauty, I don't know. I still have a bit of a shivers. I thought it was like, I don't know, it was very epic. It was such a good scene, I thought. Yeah, like CGI could have been done slightly better, but overall, like the unexpectedness of it, like I thought it was really, really well done.
Why did these people stay in the village? Like, please, just, I just don't understand why they stuck around. Like, you knew the orcs were coming. There was a chance things weren't gonna work out. Like, maybe leave. Okay, so there's a scene where Galadriel's questioning Adar. You find out a little bit about Sauron and his motives and everything. And then it's like the first time you see Galadriel's kind of got a little dark side to her, because she's threatening to murder him. She doesn't think that he or orcs deserve to exist. I mean, to be fair, like, they're killing everybody, so it's like, yeah, I don't think that's really that wrong of her to say, you know, like, their whole goal is to kill everything in existence except for themselves, so I don't really see what the problem is, you know. So the orcs show up, they shoot Bronwyn with an arrow, which, like, dangerously close to her heart, but don't worry, she's fine.
Rowan, right? I wish they actually had the guts to kill her. It sounds horrible, but there is a lot of TV series or films that would generally benefit from killing one of their main characters, because it's such an unexpected moment, and I don't think many projects have actually guts to do it. And yeah, that was one of those instances. If they killed off Rowan, I thought it would have been a much better sequence, and I would probably maybe feel something towards Westlands at that point. But alas, she's alive. Yeah, Numenor arriving to Westlands was so before even they joined the battle and stuff. But didn't you think it was such a rip-off of Twin Towers? Like the same shot. Yeah, it's going back to this whole discussion over, yeah, we're just out of ideas. We don't come up with anything new looking, and
There's quite a bit of dialogue that's just very, very on the nose. Like there's moments that I think, yeah, I don't know, it just seems like they lack trust that the audience should be able to figure out a moment just by a look or something like that without somebody having to spell it out for us. But then there's scenes that I'm like, what the hell are these people talking about?
Westland's theme music. Let's talk about this, because I keep referring back to The Witcher. Every time where you have the Broen and Arondir's theme, it makes me think of Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt. It's so strange, but like, yeah, I get very Witcher vibes, which is a good thing. So I think in all defense to the Westlands and what's been happening there, I think that the music sort of saves them from being completely irrelevant and boring to me. New theory. Halbrand is Sauron? Hear me out. Adder's asking him, who are you? So they clearly haven't met. And Halbrand has this some sort of, I don't know, revenge thing. He hates Adder, but Adder genuinely has no idea who the guy is. So then Halbrand could be actually hating Adder because he sort of wasted resources, like with the whole orc thing. And then there's this, like, I mean, call me crazy, but I'm pretty sure there's this love interest developing between Galadriel and Halbrand. And as we know, like, Halbrand did not exist in Tolkien stories at all. So what if he's hiding in the body of Halbrand, like, or something like that? Like, I don't know. My money is actually on Halbrand being Sauron right now, more than the stranger being Gandalf. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, but this is my new theory, and I hope the series have guts to actually do that, because that would have been the biggest plot twist in the last decade. I mean, yeah, obviously I'm exaggerating, but it would have been a pretty cool, unexpected moment. Yeah.
Galadriel did stuff in this episode. People did stuff. Yeah, it was fun. It was a good episode. Better than, maybe not a good episode, just better.
Thanks for watching. See you guys next week.
Okay, so let's talk about Blonde. This is basically Netflix's very first NC-17 movie. Now, as such, it's a movie that Netflix knew, the filmmakers knew it was gonna be controversial. It was probably gonna draw the ire of a lot of viewers who didn't agree with what the movie was trying to say about its subject matter, about, you know, Marilyn Monroe, who's the focus of the film. And that's basically what I think ended up happening with our panel here, because Andrew and Roland, you guys both watched this movie, and both of you came away with very, very different opinions on it. One of you liking it and the other one not so much. So yeah, Blonde,
Yeah.
and Netflix's first NC-17 film, Ana de Armas in the titular role of Marilyn Monroe. So let's start with you, Andrew. What did you think about the film?
I liked it. I
Care to elaborate?
Okay, sure. You know, I didn't know the director at all. I was blown away with his work. I think the way he chose to tell the story was great. Visually, it was so interesting, and he didn't overplay the black and white gimmick. And it's neat because he jumps from black and white to color, presenting different stories, really, in the color scenes and in the black and white scenes. He recreates iconic photos of her and like moments from her life. He gives them context, and Ana de Armas' performance was really, really good. I bought it. I spoke to a friend who said like it was really one note and she wasn't really like that. And I have to admit, I really don't know much about Marilyn Monroe outside of this outside of this movie. I was not like a huge Marilyn fan. I'd seen her in Some Like It Hot. But more than anything, I just found this to be a supremely artistic movie that was so shocking in some moments, especially because, like I said, I knew nothing about her. I was just like, my gosh, it was an assault on my senses, and sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, but like, it was pretty raw, I gotta say. So yeah, I think it's a feat of filmmaking that I can appreciate. So thumbs up.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
assault is a great way of putting it. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, Roland, what did you?
Let's see
what
how
did you
this
think of
goes.
it?
So I don't think the movie is all bad. I want to make that very clear. There are some phenomenal moments in this film and aspects that are just crazy. For example, I thought the acting was fantastic. And with the costume and the hair and makeup and just the performance, I genuinely, there was some scenes, and we were actually looking at some stills and like just looking at some stuff before we started taping, where we genuinely thought that was Marilyn Monroe, but it's actually from the movie. That you're watching and you think it's archival footage. No, they filmed that. That's how well they replicated that.
Yeah,
And the cinematography is just gorgeous and beautiful, and it's got
beautiful.
these nice flares, and it goes between black and white, just in color, just like Andrew's saying, not in your conventional way. There is these raw and intimate moments, but I have to say this movie is so misleading. And Andrew Dominic, the director, is known for making fictional biography movies.
Oh, really?
He made a movie called Chopper, which has Erica Bana in it, about this famous Australian criminal. And the first thing it says is, this biography is not accurate. Paraphrasing, that's not what it like. It's around those lines. It's a fictional interpretation, and that's what Blonde is. That's what the book was based off of, Blonde, that came out in 2000. It was a fictional biography based off of rumors and this and stuff that, and
Interesting.
basically putting in pieces of what might have happened, but also just kind of rewriting the story in general, so you get these elements and this raw feeling and these themes that were also in Marilyn Monroe, Norma Jean Baker's life.
Yeah.
So this feeling of being used for her body, and the just kind of male dominated world, and just
Well, so
various things.
I gotta ask then, like, given that, like, do you feel like as a story, take the accuracy out of it for a moment, because it happens to be based on a novelized version of a character at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Is the movie compelling from that standpoint? Is it a good story? Say she wasn't a real person. Is it a good movie?
I think there are some moments that the whole movie, like you said, it's to attack your senses, to just really shake you to your core. And I think they almost overdo it, especially in that first 15 minutes, which is just this dark feeling. But just taking it, not even thinking about how these people are all real people.
Yeah,
I think it does tell a great story of probably something that happened a lot, in that time and period. And I think it is a good story. It hurts because they could have done this story and have completely different characters. They didn't have to use these names.
Well, I mean, I don't know. See, now I'd have to go back and ask, like, what was fake and what didn't actually happen, because some of the details of this movie are the most shocking parts of it, and it's like, if that was invented, that is troubling,
The mother, Norma Jean Baker's mother was she had some undiagnosed things. That is accurate. And she didn't know her father.
Yeah.
The mother didn't obsess about the missing father, especially not like how it's shown in the movie. She never burns the house down. From what I've seen and researched, I watched a documentary about her like half a year ago. I don't believe she ever tried to drown Marilyn. But I will say, when Norma Jean did go to the orphanage, because that is a thing that happened because her mother was institutionalized, she did scream, I'm not an orphan though. I'm not an orphan, which led throughout her life.
Yeah. Do you know about the pregnancies? If those
The
details
pregnancies, that's another troubling thing. So that never happened.
None of that happened?
Whenever she's with Arthur Miller,
that didn't happen?
She did have 2 miscarriages.
But that's not how it happened?
I don't believe so.
Because that's probably that's probably the most upsetting scene in the movie.
Yeah. It's she had some sort of she had something that like that made her have like problems having kids.
Okay.
From what I've researched is that it happened twice. It was around the time with Arthur Miller. She did love kids. That's a famous thing. The last few years of her life, she was with a therapist and became really close with the therapist and their family, and just loved kids and loved people in general. But that's not necessarily a thing that, I don't know, which is another argument. A lot of people are having trouble with these scenes because they are very disturbing and horrifying. And Mags, one of our Oh So Curious peeps, she even said that this movie is a fictionalized horror movie based off of, oh gosh, how'd she word it? She worded it really well in the chat. But gosh, how did she word it?
Look it up.
Yeah, I'll look
I
it
got
up.
it. I got it.
You got it?
Don't want to put that on screen.
Put the whole thing on there. Wow.
No, it's
what did she say?
Yeah, so she said it's not a film about her. The argument is it's a horror film based on Marilyn and not a biopic made as a horror. So it's a vision of her life and her demons based on truth or reality. So remove the facts about Marilyn from the equation completely when reviewing it, and just look at it more as if you were watching The Nightmare on Elm Street rather than My Week with Marilyn. So that's how Max described it.
You know what? I think that's fair too. I mean, the thing is, even in the themes of this movie, I was like, this is actually a movie with some positive moral messages and some just positive messaging, period. It's like, to every young girl watching this, here's the price of fame. Be careful because this is what's out there for you. And that goes with the abuse, which happens to men and women, doesn't matter what part of entertainment you're in. Like, there are people who will try to overpower you and force you to do all kinds of stuff no matter what you're in. That's part of it, but also having to sell your soul and to put something up on screen that has your face but isn't you that's another thing that our culture is kind of obsessed with, creating this perfect image on, whether it be Instagram, but like we're all these girls out there trying to basically be Marilyn Monroe, but to their followers. I thought that was nice. I think it was refreshing to see, a character who really is loving as much as she's loving to everybody she encounters and desperately wants children. This is the product of absent parenting, bad parenting, and we see this woman with a desire to be a mother. It's just like totally different than, say, She-Hulk,
Yeah, definitely different vibes. I can't put my finger on it, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Oh no. The other thing that's very different from She-Hulk is the Rotten Tomatoes rating. So we just talked about earlier in the show, She-Hulk is now certified fresh. This movie's got 227 reviews from critics, and it's sitting at a 44%.
Why?
Far away from
What are people saying?
fresh.
Can we scroll down and see
Let's
what's
see. By the way, the audience
Andrew,
rating
I
is
think
not
you
that
do
high
have a
either.
really good point of if you take away the like comparing, like actually using Marilyn Monroe and you just had it as a story, I think it would have gotten a much better reception because there are so many fantastic things about it. Just like books and like stories and just like things that probably happened, but you don't really have a handle on it. But this is a person that turned into this myth and legend that people still connect with to this day, like you're saying with influencers. So it almost hurts to see like how people are seeing an injustice to her as a person.
I mean, honestly, like for me, this drew immediate comparisons to Elvis, and like I think if we know what's his name, Andrew Dominic,
Yeah.
if we know that he does fictionalized versions of people's lives, we should be okay with that. I think maybe the marketing should indicate like this is a story that imagines Marilyn Monroe's
Yes,
life.
definitely.
They should like that's on the part of the marketing.
Yeah.
But with Elvis, like that was something that's like this is the biopic. This is the official story of Elvis, and I didn't buy that for a second. I just didn't feel like I was watching Elvis. So maybe as a society we have to decide what is a biopic. And again, I have to always, because I'm just really excited for it. I'm very, very excited to see Weird Al's biopic.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Because he's going to put biopics on trial. And it's
going to be the new Dewey Cox
which is my favorite movie. What we do, we create these icons out of people, and we tell the story of they were abused, then they had a struggle with drugs, and now they're God. And that's every biopic from Walk the Line or Ray, Rocket Man, Bohemian Rhapsody. It's the exact same story, just changing out the music. Same with Walk Hard, but that was the point it was making.
Yeah.
I think, we need to take a step back and ask ourselves, what does it mean to live a life? What do these people do that made them successful? And how are we going to remember this person, not change the story to fit the context of modern audiences or modern tastemakers? Because these are things that we're going to want to watch again so that we can live the story of that person's life outside of their music or their movies or, whatever they made.
Well, let me ask you guys something. So a big thing about this movie, like it's a risky film and risky endeavor because it's an NC-17 film, which basically kills any theatrical potential. So just trying to get this thing made, I think, was always going to be a challenge, which is probably why it took this long, because a company like Netflix can take that risk because they don't care so much about the theatrical run. And a lot of people are saying things like, I mean, the critics consensus says Ana de Armas' luminous performance makes it difficult to look away, but Blonde can be hard to watch as it teeters between commenting on exploitation and contributing to it. So they lean into the rating. Now, I want to ask you guys, do you think for you, knowing what we know about the film now and the conversation we have had, was that NC-17 rating justified? Was it earned? And also, should this movie have taken that visceral of an approach to the story? Fictionalized or otherwise?
First of all, the visceral approach is one of my favorite things about it. It was unapologetic in that, and like I think more artists should take risks like that. I love that. I think the NC-17 rating, even though there's plenty of shocking moments in this, I think that's just Netflix, marketing. Hey, we have the first ever NC-17 movie because it's the first. And when something's the first, for some reason, we think that matters.
Yeah. It definitely earned its rating. I will say that much. There's definitely some scenes where like she didn't have to be naked. Like she could have clearly just been like pajamas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
they didn't sexualize her in those scenes though, which was also interesting. They weren't like shooting her like this object. They were just sort of showing this like
Yeah.
naked body. You know, it wasn't, she wasn't posing or like trying to
I think that's what's so
seduce.
jarring about it is that, yeah,
Is that you're
exactly.
looking at it, it's like, it's not sexy. What's wrong? Why isn't it sexy?
Like, all right, so spoiler, so when her well, technically her second husband, but her first husband in the film, um, is like angry about getting blackmailed about these photos, he goes upstairs and she calls him daddy like 5 times, and then he just beats the life out of her, but she's
Yeah.
not wearing, she's pretty much naked, so it's like this very jarring kind of like, I guess, normalizing your body maybe.
Well, you know what I thought? I mean, I thought there was also some drama in that because she was at that point really just sort of living for him. She gave herself over. It was almost, that was actually the closest I'd seen to like "Don't Worry, Darling." It was like she really was just like, "Hey, you're home. Guess what I have ready for you." It was this earnest, like I said, loving and innocent gesture that was being met with so much anger and hostility, and his rage cuts through that. I don't think it was, gratuitous. I think
Yeah.
there was a
Also,
reason for it.
yeah, fun fact, that he did after the whole like her like wearing the white dress and the air goes up,
Yeah.
there was like an altercation that was a deal, but one of the reasons that they got divorced was his physical abuse, obviously, but also that he was telling her that she should settle down and have a kid and stuff like that, but she really wanted to continue acting in her career. Now, it is true that she like struggled with the stardom and stuff like that because she really wanted to act. That's why she goes to that New York circle, because she really cared about the integrity of acting.
Yeah.
But I think it's,
There,
yeah.
there was also a great scene where she does that audition, and you get these two guys talking to the director, and one being like, "Oh, she was brilliant. She really dug deep into something that and like he's trying to talk about what a brilliant actress she is." And then you have
Yeah.
this other guy who goes, "Oh, she's just a crazy woman digging into her own insanity and just putting it on display. That's not acting. That's psychosis." Which I
Yeah.
thought was a wonderful evisceration of a lot of modern acting, by the way. Just putting that out there. Ultimately, the director goes, "Man, look at her ass," and she gets the job. So, the film comments on itself a lot in a lot of really interesting ways, especially when there's that shot we have of the woman dressing Marilyn, and they recreate that in the movie as well. And she's saying, "I don't really enjoy it," and this woman dressing her is like, "Oh, don't think for a second that every woman in the world wouldn't trade places with you. Of course you love it."
Yeah.
There was a good amount of self-awareness in this, and it wasn't winking so much as addressing arguments that would inevitably be made.
Okay,
I agree.
well, so all that said, and I guess we can wrap up with this. Would you or would you not recommend this movie to someone else who's either got a passing interest in it or, is a fan of biopics or in general is just looking for a movie to watch? Is this a film that you would recommend? And Roland, I'll start with you on this one. Would you recommend this to somebody?
I think that you should really, before you click on this movie, you should definitely like really like think if you're in that mind space, if you're really open to like to have something hit you to your core and expect something raw and get to like themes and ideas that are very deep and might hit you in different ways to each person, then I think you should go in also knowing that this is a fictional biopic.
Yeah.
But just be careful. I think that's the only thing I want to say at the end of
I
that.
think that's fair. I would say I would recommend this to people who are interested in film because it is a great film. It's not a movie. It's not even really a biopic, but if you want to take in some aesthetics and some inventive cinematography, and just like see what's possible with film. This is a really imaginative and like daring movie. I'll say that.
Yes.
Okay.
It's very risky for, yeah.
It was
There
Oh,
goes the
damn,
camera
come
again.
on. He can bear it.
it was
I'll fix
brutal. It was
Artistic.
artistic, and it was daring.
I think the word that I used was dour, but
You said Dour.
said
Yeah.
dour.
Yeah. The joke at the beginning of the
B.A.D..
show, BAD. I thought it was good, though. Anyway, tell us what you think. Watch it or don't, you know. But if you do, watch it with some caution and know that it's not all real. Take in the story and the acting and the aesthetics because it's worth it for that. And then tell us what you think in the comments because we're just a couple of guys talking about it. You can join that conversation, and maybe you'll even be on the show next week as the comment of the week. We don't know. We can't predict the future, but we will be talking about other stuff next week. That being, all kinds of stuff. First, before we get to the end of the show, Andor. People are liking Andor. The joke, and or what, is going around there. I think it's silly. I like it, though. Let's see what happened in episode 4.
People are standing up.
Andor episode 4. Fully enjoyed it, and it's still going strong. Whatever they did with Star Wars, please, let's keep it coming. The show just keeps delivering. So let me start with the music. Nicholas Britell, once again, he delivered. One of the most talented music composers out there right now. I really enjoyed every score he delivers. I know him from Succession. If you haven't seen Succession, drop everything what you do, watch Andor, then watch Succession, or the other way around, watch Succession, then Andor. Whatever music he writes, it just captures every single emotion and explores the depth of the character and beauty of the story, essentially. And it fits the story, but at the same time, it doesn't feel way too intrusive. It's its own character, but it's not taking the lead. The show doesn't rely on the music being good. I think it works really well. Stellan Skarsgård. So we know him from dozens of good characters on the screen and variety of different personalities that he sort of embraced over the years. It's so weird to see him in Star Wars universe. And it's not weird because he doesn't fit. It's weird because he fits so well. It looks like he's just been always in the Star Wars universe. So for example, in Blade Runner, I could not buy the fact that Ryan Gosling was part of that world. It didn't fit. Whereas Stellan Skarsgård kind of fits Star Wars, and I like it. I really like who he is and what he offers, what he brings to the table, and yeah, like more of the characters, more of the actors of that caliber. I think that's what the Star Wars needed. Luthen leaves the Kyber crystal, and obviously Kyber crystals are what lightsabers are made of. And yeah, it was really cool. Again, not to Rakuten and stuff, and who I personally know from the Knights of the Republic game. And again, another one of those Easter eggs that only true die-hard fans could get. So, you know, it's not a Darth Maul appearance, and it's all very sane, all very logical. We find out he's a double agent. He's a secret persona in the, I'm guessing it's Coruscant, but it's probably not. As it turns out, he's plotting and conspiring against the Empire as a art curator or art gallery director, which I thought was very interesting. That's where we also bombarded with so many different Easter eggs of different artifacts from different games. You could see like a Vader-inspired helmet, who obviously famously was taken from a samurai warrior suit and helmet. It was really amazing to be in that gallery, and I really enjoyed every second of it. But yeah, he meets Mon Mothma. Turns out she's the financier of the whole rebellion, which obviously is not even called rebellion then, but yeah, she's helping him out behind the scenes. Genevieve Riley, she's returning from the Rogue One, and she's not the Mon Mothma I remember from The New Hope, but you know, she works. She looks like her. She's a lot more sturdier. I think that's the right word. Mon Mothma was pretty much like Galadriel, just a little bit more reserved, be calmer. This Mon Mothma is yeah, she still got age. She's young. The script. I need to talk about the script again because I'm gonna go back to the beginning again. But the short exchange that Cassian and Luthen, Stan Skarsgård's character, are having was so well written that, again, it was one of those moments I forgot completely I was watching Star Wars. It was very thoughtful, very deep, without actually being pretentious. So you also get to look into the politics of the Empire, different hierarchy, and different roles and different officers and like this office politics. It's very enjoyable, and again, you know, as if Andor sort of established, we get to see a lot of information, a lot of insight into ordinary people's lives. So, you know, seeing the offices of the Empire and how everyone's trying to climb up to the top to be the leader of the bad stuff. Whoa, that was a huge dragonfly that just tried to attack me, but it managed to hit the window. Anyway, it's very captivating. It's very enjoyable to watch, and it's very believable knowing that Empire is just not this cold yes, no sort of. Everyone's sort of trying to pursue their own agenda, and again, even though it's placed in Star Wars, it doesn't feel like Star Wars. So we're landing at Naldani. We have Fel, who's a new character, a very sturdy, again, another sturdy woman character, and very driven, very passionate, very territorial, and I don't know, I like it. I like that, you know, we evolved from Princess Leia or Queen Amidala, aka Padme's sort of archetype of the Star Wars girl and stuff. So her conversation with Luthen only showed how even the good guys have emotions, how they can show anger, how they can be annoying, like showing actually the true experience of being a human. It's not all about following the codes and, you know, being punished for falling in love or being angry. Like, again, sorry for bringing Skywalkers, but that's what we know Star Wars did to Anakin. There is more than right or wrong. You can get angry, you can be annoyed if it's for the right reason and within the limit. I'm glad that Andor's sort of retouching bases with those true experiences and feelings of what's it like to be human. Alex LOTR, who I know from The End of the Fucking World, brilliant actor again, and it just added a very interesting kind of spice. This episode was pretty much like its characters. It was full of emotion, full of just no bullshit. Like, Star Wars is no more bullshit. It's open cards and it's fair game, and I'm extremely looking forward to next week, and absolute pleasure to be reviewing good Star Wars shows again. Like and subscribe, and yeah, catch you guys next week. May the Force be with you.
I'm not slipping. I've just been hiding for too long.
Okay, next week, Munna Bhai M.B.B.S, the next of the Bollywood Virgins series in our Bollywood Virgin series. So that's what I'll be watching at some point this week, dedicating probably a good 3.5 hours to that. But from what I hear, it's worth it. So I'll be looking forward to talking to you about that. Watch along with us and see what we think. Do what I do, watch it with no subtitles, and we'll sort of see what that's all about. Is there anything else you wanted to cover before next week? We have some Marvel news.
Yeah, I mean, we'll touch upon that later. Do look for that video on the channel. We didn't have time to fit it on the main show, but I did very quickly. I did want to give you guys a quick preview of this film.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is just for context sake. This is a movie that's basically like around the same age as the movie we just did, which is called Honaho. It's like 2003, 2004. It might have actually come out the same year, to be fair. And it's a story about basically this righteous gangster who sort of has a heart, a good heart, and he came to Mumbai to like have a better life from the village that he was in, and then he told his parents the next time they spoke to him over the phone that they asked him like, hey, what did you get up to? What did you make of yourself? Like now you're living in the city. And he panicked in the moment and he says, I became a doctor. And they were so proud of just hearing like, oh, wow, like, it's obviously a big deal. And then um, they one day decide to come out to the city to visit him. Or actually they keep doing this over time, but this particular time is different because this time when they come to visit him, the charade that he keeps putting on every time to show up kind of just starts falling apart, and because they try to get him married, and he has to be like, well, tell the other woman, like, because he has a good heart, he's like, look lady, I'm not actually a doctor, just it's all arranged marriage stuff. So he tells her, just reject me so your parents like will tell my parents that it's not going to work out, so that this because I don't want you to get tied up into something that you don't have to, because I'm obviously not a real doctor. And then that kind of like spirals into like his parents finding out, and that's then we get on to the real story, which is the movie overall is a commentary and critique on the healthcare system and the educational system in India. So, and the corruption and how people are like, they'd rather stick to a certain way of doing things as it's institutionalized, even if it costs somebody their life. And this movie kind of critiques it, so it's very much like it's not just a movie where you just kind of want to, it's obviously lets you escape into a different world, this heightened reality, but it is a critique on real world problems in India. So yeah, and the director Rajkumar Hirani, I brought him up before, I think a while ago when we were talking like big directors that are inspiration for us, and he is one of the most well-respected directors out there. In fact, he's currently working on a movie with Shah Rukh Khan, who was the star of Kal Ho Na Ho, and the first collaboration between that actor and director. And he's known for making these kind of like movies that just go beyond just telling like a standard Bollywood story, and giving you something a little deeper and more of a critique on the various aspects of society, and while at the same time being entertaining. So, but yeah, this movie is just about as old as the one we did. I mean, does that like spark anything inside you in terms of interest, or is this something that now you're more interested or less interested based on what
I just hope it doesn't get too political. It sounds like that's the one danger I could see with this, is like, because it's one thing to comment on it, but to again, 3 hours, you could amass a good amount of vitriol and political messaging in 3.5 hours. So that's my only concern there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think you're gonna. I've seen this movie many a times, so I don't think that should be a concern, because it doesn't really
Then I'm not
preach.
concerned.
It doesn't become preachy at any point in time.
Then I'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's a compelling premise for sure. I'm surprised there hasn't been an American remake of it, honestly, just by the sound of it.
We do like our golden-hearted bad boys. So
yeah, it honestly just feels like an American story, aside from the arranged marriage.
Right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that's a fair point. I love this movie because it connects on many different levels. It gets pretty heavy at times. Like, I think the title card for this, I think I mentioned this before we went on air, but the image on the left that we use for this segment, title card, that's an image of Sanjay Dutt and Sunil Dutt, like his father on the left and him on the right, who are both in this movie. And this movie came out and was being made at a time where Sanjay Dutt was going through a lot of like bad. It was a rough time in his life. He had been recently incarcerated for something that was trumped up charges essentially, and his acting career was not going anywhere. He was getting all kinds of bad roles that were sort of just like these bad movies that he just was signing up to essentially get paid and do something with this, so it's not sitting on his butt doing nothing. And then this script comes along from this new young filmmaker who's not really well known, and his father convinces him to like do this movie. This looks like a good script. It may not be the kind of thing you usually do. Like, he was a big action kind of a person at that time, and this movie is not really an action film. And the irony of this movie is him and his father had a strained relationship at the time. So in this movie, through this movie, they sort of mended their relationship. And then in this movie, there's this big scene where they like hug toward the end of the film. And that holds a lot more emotional significance in the aftermath of the film, because shortly after the movie came out, his father passed away. So now, even for him, like Sanjay Dutt himself, like he looks back at this movie and the experience that they made a sequel to this, by the way, later on, which was also really good. So he remembers it fondly, and then the people who follow and love Bollywood movies also remember it fondly, because his father was a beloved actor, and he now is one of the revered actors of his generation in Bollywood. So I hope you guys like the movie for what it is on its own merits, but then just giving you some context in terms of when it came out and the real life implications of like the story and what was going on around the actor, because I think that played a big part in him taking the role, and then how he played off the role and all that. So
Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. It sounds like, again, different story, different from what I'm used to seeing around here. So I'll let you know what I think next week. In the meantime, follow us, be our friend, do all the stuff that a good follower does, and be part of this movie fan community. Take in some new content. Tell us what you think. Participate, god damn it. And from there, we'll just say thank you for watching. But why don't we? Did we want to cover some of the Marvel stuff? Or are we?
we will. We're gonna do it separately and post it as its own video. I didn't want to have the show run too long. I think we've taken up enough of people's time. But if you are interested,
stay tuned.
you can check it out.
We'll be back. In the meantime, have a good week. We'll see you throughout the week on all the stuff. See you later. Goodbye.
Deuces.